Okay, am I now on? Okay, I will try that a second time. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for all traveling out to join us at the Galactic 7 mission. I know some of you have traveled, and we appreciate that, and I think we can all agree this morning was just an amazing and incredible day. And we just have 4 new astronauts walking around Spaceport America right now. So I'm Alana Crane, I lead communications. It's been great to get to know some of you, and it's great to see some of you again that I have met before. Now, just as a reminder on who we had on board this flight, we had 4 new crew members. We had Tuva Atasheva, who is now astronaut 27. He was the research astronaut on board. We also had 3 private astronauts. So we had Andy Sadwani, we had Giorgio Minenti, and we had Irving Pergamons as well. Today, we are going to be focused on the research portion of this mission. And before we actually get into the press conference and I invite the guests up to join me, I'm going to invite my president here, Mike Moses of our Spaceline, and he's going to just say a few words before he has to head off.
Thanks, Alana. Let's see. Yep, come on. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. Today was really a terrific day here at Spaceport America. A great flight here in New Mexico of Galactic 7 and of Unity right behind us. And as Alana said, before you have a chance to hear about some of the amazing research that was done by our really great customers with Axiom and the Turkish Space Agency, I wanted to just talk a little bit because not only was this the 32nd flight of Unity, I think it's our 7th, our 12th space flight, our 7th commercial space flight. It also is a bittersweet moment because it's also the last flight of Unity. And I want to just pivot for 1 second, reflect back on Unity for 1 moment, and then just do a little bit of what the next chapter with Delta will look like for us. So before I do that, just Alana talked about the crew that flew. Piloting the ship today was Nicola Pacelli and Jamil Janjua. First flight to space for Jamil. In our mothership, we had Andy Edgel and CJ Sturkyle flying the mothership. A really great crew taking care of everybody today. So as I said, marks kind of our final flight for Unity, and it kind of ends a really incredible chapter. If I think about how chapters work, right? This vehicle was revolutionary. I got to work at NASA on the Space Shuttle program, and that was actually a revolutionary program as well in government human spaceflight. And so when that chapter ended for me and the shuttle retired and I left, I wanted to come here to Virgin Galactic to start and launch a human spaceflight program to continue that tradition of myself taking people to space, but also opening up the frontiers of a company to do so. And so when I got to Virgin Galactic, I was able to join an amazing, incredible team in Mojave, California that built this vehicle by hand. We tested it, we flew it, we demonstrated and proved to the world that commercial human spaceflight is possible with private funding for private companies, right? And so while a Unity accomplished amazing, amazing things there in the test program, it really took off, and another chapter opened when we moved here to Spaceport America, and we brought the commercial human spaceflight to the land of enchantment. So 7 commercial space flights, single vehicle flying 6 times in 6 months last year. That's groundbreaking. The joke with the space shuttle program is you flew every 4 or 5 months because it took that long to fill out all the paperwork, right? The fact that we can take this vehicle back to back to back on a monthly basis is really revolutionary. So with that, as amazing as that chapter is, the next chapter is actually even more revolutionary. Our Delta fleet of spaceships is designed to fly almost 8 times faster than that, right? So 2 flights a week. We're going to field in 2026 2 spaceships, our mothership Eve. That's 750 astronauts a year going to space. That's more than have gone to space in the 60-year history of spaceflight to date, right? So that, you want to talk about a space line, that fleet of Delta ships represents a space line, a commercial product for us. It's all built on the back of an amazing team and an amazing vehicle here behind me. So I just wanted to take a moment to talk about that. Thank everybody for coming, to thank our team who put together a fantastic mission today. And Alana, I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so we have some people here waiting in the sidelines to come and join me. So if I can invite each of you to come up. I'm going to introduce them one by one, and then we have mic runners on either side. So if you do have a question, just raise your hand and please just state your name and publication. Apologies to everyone that's tuned in online. Thank you for joining this press conference. We aren't able to accept questions, but if you do have any, please send them through to the Virgin Galactic press inbox, and we'd be very happy to get back to you. And after the press conference, if you would like to speak with anyone on a one-to-one basis, again, just come to myself and my team for Virgin Galactic, and also the Axiom team that is here supporting, and we'd be very happy to facilitate. But let's jump straight in. So first up, Tuva Ashisheva, please join me up here. Tuva is our research astronaut. Tuva's flying today on behalf of the Turkish Space Agency and also Axiom. And then Michael Lopez Alegria, can I ask you to come up? So Mike LA is the chief astronaut for Axiom Space. And then the Deputy Minister for Information and Technology in Turkey, please join us. And finally, Sarisha Bandler, astronaut 004, but also our Vice President of Government Affairs and Research Operations. Okay, so I think first of all, I had a question for each of you, and I'd love for each of you to just say a little about yourself as well for our audience today. Starting with you, Tuva. I mean, how was it? You just went to space.
When you put it like that, it says maybe bringing more light to it.
Let me just check your audio level.
Açacaksın galiba. Turn.
Where's your... Do you know where the pack is? Is it on now? Okay. Yeah, why don't we do that and I'll start. Yeah.
It's just the anticipation.
The anticipation. Well, Sarisha's mic is working, and so actually, let's go to Sarisha quickly, because Tuva is going to wow us with an explanation of all of the research he was doing on this flight. Sarisha can also talk about the other research that was flying on board on behalf of NASA Flight Opportunities, UC Berkeley, and Purdue. So why don't we do that, and then we'll check that everything else is working.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. So this was such a special day, and it's just really incredible to see our vehicle being used for research and science capabilities. I think everyone here knows we have a modular cabin, so wherever there's a seat, you can replace it with a rack and install autonomous or human-tended payloads. So we did have a rack on board, and we had 2 payloads installed, both funded by the NASA Flight Opportunities Program, an incredible program to enable using suborbital capabilities for science and technology development. So we had 2 payloads, one from UC Berkeley that was looking at computed axial lithography, and I did check in on the way in, and they had successfully printed something, which is absolutely cool, incredible. I'm going to go back and check in again because I didn't get to actually see all of it, but just kudos to the team. It's a new type of printing that you cannot do in 1G. You actually need to print in microgravity, and it allows researchers and technologists to print complex shapes faster. It's really cool to see that technology being tested out. And we also had a payload from Purdue University, the best university ever. I said it, I did it. I'm sorry, I'm a Purdue grad, Boilermaker, so I'm just giving them a shout out. So Purdue was doing an experiment on looking at rotational slosh. So slosh is, oh, hello? Now can you hear me better? Okay. I'm not going to repeat everything, so hopefully you heard how excited I am about the science, and I'm happy to talk more about it. But Purdue University had a payload looking at slosh in tanks, so looking at how liquid moves in tanks and how we can, dampen that liquid or slow that movement for space application purposes. So it's really cool to see this technology tested with real applications for not only here on Earth, but also for furthering space exploration.
Okay, so Tuva, you've had a chance to also think about it now.
Oh, I will need much more time to really process what just happened. It was such a condensed ride. The first shock was the release, and we were just, for a brief second, which felt like it was longer, we were just floating. But right after, the rocket motor started, and boy, that power that we were riding on that ship was probably the most impressive aspect of the flight. And of course, floating in microgravity is super fun, and it's so comforting as well. There's something to it which brings about an immense serenity. There's a innate peacefulness to it. I don't know why. I will think about it and get back to you why that's the case. And my mom is a gynecologist. I don't know if I picked it up from her, but when you're in the womb, you're kind of like floating, right? You're in neutral buoyancy condition. I don't know how many G's you're pulling while you're in the womb and developing as a human, but maybe there's a connection there. I have no idea. Our researchers will look into some data and maybe tell in the future. But looking down at the Earth, at our atmosphere with a couple of layers, just starting from a darker blue to stepping up to a lighter tones. Yeah, it's not something that you can describe with adjectives. You cannot just, yeah, it was great, it was so blue, it was this and that. It will not do justice because it is an experiential thing, I think. It's what I heard many astronauts define the experience as visceral. You just feel it in your gut, if you will. I'm sorry, Vlad, even though you have been collecting prefrontal cortex activity, let's see if you're gonna able to see it, the markers over there, but it was, I think, deeper than that. And the way to describe the experience can be maybe more emotional. When you are a couple of years old, like 4 or 5 years old, you just go to a family friend's house, and you just play with their kids, and you're all tired, and you fall asleep, right? And on the couch, and your dad is picking you up and just guiding you to the car or whatever, and you just feel that warmth, and just you're floating in that moment as well, right? You're neither awake nor asleep. It was something like that. How you would feel in that moment, just looking down at Earth, floating, that seeing our beautiful planet. Yeah, from an experiential perspective, I can define it like that, maybe. Yeah.
Wow. So that sounds amazing. I have many follow-up questions, but I will certainly let the audience go first. But before we do that, Mike, this has been a pretty big week for the space industry. And, you know, working with Axiom has just been fantastic. Can you share a little of your perspective on what this day and possibly even this week, you know, means within this sort of blooming industry?
Yes, thank you. First of all, let me say it's a pleasure to be up here with some old friends and medium friends and new friends. I'm Michael Lopez Alegría. I'm the chief astronaut at Axiom Space. Axiom's role here was to have phase 2 of our agreement with the Republic of Turkey through the Turkish Space Agency and TÜBİTAK Uzay, which is their research arm. The first phase was to fly Alper Girizauci, who is the first Turkish astronaut to the ISS in January, February, for 21 days of research and outreach activities. And the second phase is to fly Tuva, the second Turkish astronaut and first proper Azerbaijani astronaut in the history of humanity. And it's a great pleasure for us to participate in that. And while Tuva was arguably the most important payload for us on this mission, we had, he conducted 7 experiments, 3 of which were carryovers from AX-3, the Axiom mission that occurred earlier this year. And we also had an Axiom experiment which involved an insulin pen with the idea that we would be able to accurately, I guess, prove in microgravity that we can accurately dispense a measured amount of insulin for future applications in spaceflight. And before I close, I just want to say something about this young man. We trained together for AX-3. He was the backup for our Alper. He is an extremely conscientious, dedicated, curious, intelligent and capable young man, and I couldn't be prouder of you, Tuva.
Thank you, Mike. And coming now over to Deputy Minister, I mean, this has been a huge day for Turkey. If we could just start with, what does this mean to your nation?
Thank you very much. My name is Ahmet Yozgatligil. I'm the Deputy Minister of Industry and Technology. As you mentioned, it's really an important day for Turkey. Under the leadership of our President, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Turkey has a very ambitious space program. It's a nation space program which has very ambitious goals. Human space program is part of it, and in our 100th year of Republic's anniversary, we were able to send 2 astronauts. The first astronaut, as MLA mentioned, Alper Gezer, he went to the ISS and he conducted several experiments, 13 experiments actually there. And now our second astronaut today, Tua, performed really important experiments. Some of them are continuation of what Alper did in ISS, and some are new experiments. So, as I said, Turkey is becoming a very important space nation. And in just 1 month's time, we are launching our first communication satellite, fully developed and manufactured in Turkey. So we have other goal of the national space program is reaching the moon in 2026. And as Turkey, we are also aiming to have our independent access to space, our own spaceport with international collaboration. So Turkey, as I mentioned, is becoming a true space nation, and our collaboration with Axiom Space in this human space program for our first 2 astronauts was very successful, and we are hoping to collaborate in the future for our next moves.
Thank you so much. So do we have questions in the audience? Okay, Jeff, we'll come to you first.
Jeff Faust of Space News. Question for Tuva. You want to talk about the experiments that you performed? How well did they work? Did you run into any surprises carrying out any of the experiments during the flight?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Jeff. The experimental side of the flight was a huge success. I was able to carry out all the necessary operations related with the 3 payloads that I was carrying on me, on my custom-built flight suit successfully. And one of the things actually we figured out during the flight week, we had 2 aerobic flights with Virgin Galactic's planes right over there, sitting there, just giving me goosebumps even looking at them. And in those flights as well, I was wearing all the payloads that I was gonna carry to space. And in one of them, we figured out something with the insulin pen payload, and that was not working quite the way that we were expecting. And we iterated, we changed a couple of things, and this time around it worked perfectly. In microgravity, I was able to deliver the doses on 2 different pens and sort of hand the unit to the PI. For the beacon experiment, the same goes. So the beacon experiment was actually looking into how the blood dynamics change in the prefrontal cortex area using a near-infrared spectroscopy. And also they were collecting a bunch of data from my chest for breathing and heart rate as well, to understand the impact of CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, to SANS, spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome. For the first time in all phases of a spaceflight, this measurement was done. It was a huge success. I was able to operate the data collection unit successfully as well. So I'm really looking forward to receiving the data. And one of the things that the Beacon experiment has been looking into has to do with the overview effect. How brain changes, how the prefrontal cortex, which is the abstract thinking portion of our brain, conceptualizes this experience. And to the best of my knowledge, this was the first time that this was done as well, and they collected a bunch of biospecimen from me before and after flight, so they're going to be able to hopefully identify the psychophysiological effects and impacts of seeing our blue planet from that vantage point. And I was, as you know, carrying a radiation dosimeter on my right calf, and an active and wearable radiation dosimeter. I was able to observe its operation. It functioned throughout the flight without any issues. And hopefully we will be able to use that data that we collected and feed it into one of the experiments that we have on the human physiology side called Myeloid, in which the PIs have been looking into how the ionizing radiation in space conditions impact this myeloid-derived suppressor cells, which are generated by our bone marrow in some acute inflammation processes like cancer. They want to understand how high exposure to radiation in space affects that. So we're going to use the dosimeter data, feed it into the myeloid, that how much radiation I was exposed to, and hopefully they're going to be able to generate more accurate and reliable data. So from my perspective and from the PI's perspective as well, the scientific aspect of the mission was a huge success, and I'm super excited about that.
Oh, we have a question down the front.
Monica Logroño, I'm with KOB4. I have another question for Tuba. I was just wondering, so where do these experiments go after the fact? So you have all the data now. What's the next step?
So, of course, the suborbital spaceflight is one of the steps that you take on your journey to an orbital research investigation, right? You generally start with some, if you can book in Bremen, those start with those drop towers and get a couple of seconds, maybe 2-3 seconds of microgravity exposure. Then you hop on some parabolic flights, which our deputy minister is quite familiar with, who has flown maybe hundreds of parabolas, if I'm not mistaken. You iterate on those flights as well, relatively easily accessible flights. Then you step up and go to the actual space conditions through suborbital research flights, suborbital space flights. And you get a much longer, this time around, it was close to 3 minutes of exposure, and learn from that as well. And eventually you reach Earth orbit to carry out whatever investigation you're looking to carry out. So we will look into the data, analyze it, understand it. If there were certain aspects that needs to be tweaked, isolate them, implement them, and hopefully over the next couple of years develop a microgravity research roadmap for Turkey that is going to enrich people's lives both in our country and also globally. So that's what we are hoping to get to. Sure.
Sorry. My favorite question. What did you take in your pockets?
I had a bunch of items. Of course, during our announcements, the president of our country, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, as he announced us to the entire nation and to the world, he gave us Turkish flags, one for me and one for Alper, and I took that with me, of course, to the microgravity conditions. And with me, I had the Azerbaijan flag as well, which represents my motherland. They were standing right next to each other, covered by a very special piece of fabric that is important for the people of Palestine, who are kind of in a very painful situation right now, and those were with me on my over my chest. I carried. So we like to say, for Turkey and Azerbaijan, 2 states, 1 nation. So to reflect that, they were sitting right next to each other over my chest, and I had a bunch of personal items from family and friends. I carried them with me. The president has gifted me a watch. I was wearing that as well on my non-operational arm. I had a clock watch, stopwatch, a timer on my left arm that I was dealing with while I was working on the experiments, and yeah, bunch of other items as well. I was quite heavy, and getting rid of them was a relief.
Great, and I'm going to come through to more questions in the room, but just quickly, I was going to come to you, Mike, and then to you, Deputy Minister. I think, first of all, Mike, one of the questions we received was, why is it so important that we can continue to sort of break these boundaries and being able to do research in space? And then second, to you, Deputy Minister, sort of what are some of the broader ambitions in Turkey within the space industry?
Thanks again, Alana. I think it's a beautiful segue to the next step to what happened today. Us flying Turkey and other countries on the AX-3 mission is just another step in the direction of expanding access to space for more countries, more researchers, more individuals, because ultimately we like to democratize the experience. I think we are planning to build a private space station that will substitute for the ISS when eventually it's deorbited. And we want the current users of the ISS to be some of many customers. And so we are actively expanding the market to, as I said, more nations, more researchers, more people. This is part of the ethos of the company, and I think that this transition from the first Turkish astronaut to the second Turkish astronaut to who knows whether it'll be another Turkish astronaut or other countries is just a logical sequence, and it's very important for us as a company to be expanding that access.
So, as I mentioned in my initial comment, Turkey is in its 100th anniversary of the Republic of Turkey. We have a really ambitious space program. And as we have achieved our goals by sending our 2 astronauts to space and performing space-related research, microgravity research, also, the space economy, the new space concept, we are having a very strong space industry. When we talk about space industry, we talk about satellites. As I mentioned, last year we have launched our observatory satellite. When I say we, Turkey as a nation is made in Turkey. And also in a month we are going to send our communication satellite. And also we would like to have our own GNSS series of satellites that will be launched. And we understand the importance of having access to space. So we are working on that also too, the spaceport concept. And we are with international collaboration and with the launching technology, we are targeting to be able to send our own satellites and hopefully in one day our own, astronauts to the space, which, as a humanity, we are going to that direction. So, this space industry and the new space concept is very, very important for Turkey, and we are taking the necessary steps to move along this direction.
Thank you for that. Do we have any other questions in the room?
A bit about the experiments that UC Berkeley and Purdue were doing, what they sent up.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a rack that has room for basically 4 mid-deck size lockers. Each experiment was approximately a mid-deck locker using power from our ship that's provided. And for example, the Berkeley team with the 3D printing, they were looking at a new way to do 3D printing. I kind of alluded to this, and I apologize for going a little fast. The way we print right now, the 3D printing mechanisms, is mostly the putting layers on top of layers. You can't really do complex shapes, and also it's slow. So what they're doing is looking at a new method where they're looking at a polymer, basically projecting images into the polymer and using light to cure it. You can make much more complex, print much more complex shapes, and you can do it much quicker. And you can only do it in microgravity. You can't do it in 1G. And so you can make those shapes in space. You can use it for fixing structures while in space. It's introducing the ability to be sustainable in environments where we don't have all the tools we need all the time. So I think it's incredible, and I'm really excited to see what they do next. As I think we talked about it a little bit on the panel, for suborbital, because of the access that it provides, repeatable access at a lower cost point, researchers aren't really planning payloads that are one and done. They want to use this to do iterative campaigns, test again and get multiple data points. And if a payload does not work quite the way they expect, they have another opportunity. It's the fly, fix, fly method that NASA Flight Opportunities has been touting since it formed. So it's really cool to see that the microgravity space-based research ecosystem is growing, and you can see researchers creating campaigns to do continuous research, like parabolic aircraft. You do those multiple flights per year, and you can see that with the suborbital vehicle as well. And then Purdue was looking at rotational slosh, so they had tanks in their payload, and they were looking at how the liquid moves in the tanks in microgravity and methods to dampen that movement. Because if you think about small satellites or other structures, slosh is not the most friendly thing for a vehicle's movements. So looking at ways to contain slosh is always a good method. Like looking at different ways to contain slosh is always a way to improve your vehicle when on orbit, and also getting to orbit as well. So we're really excited to have them on board, and I'm already excited about talking about the next steps for their research. I'll just pass. You don't have to keep getting up.
Any more questions? Yep, Jeff, we'll come to you.
Question for Mike. Between your experience working with Tuva on this flight and also flying with Walter Villadai, who flew on Galactic 1 about a year ago, what's your assessment of the value of suborbital spaceflight for research or training or other uses to support what Axiom wants to do in orbital spaceflight?
I think both Sarisha and Tuva touched on it, but it's obviously sort of a proving ground. You follow this roadmap of microgravity research from drop towers to parabolic flights to suborbital to orbital, so that's one obvious advantage. As a training platform, I think it certainly, arguably there are more different kinds of accelerations in a suborbital flight, because you've got, when you drop and you have the pull-up, which is quite aggressive. I think you could probably attest to that. We don't really feel like anything like that in an orbital launch. It's all what we call plus X Gs, and so it's an interesting but different experience, I think, for them. But honestly, anytime you're exposed to a microgravity environment for longer than the 20 or 25 seconds you get in a parabolic flight, I think it's advantageous. We've seen people, as they fly to space on their second or third time, consistently do better with what we call space adaptation syndrome, which is generally people feel a bit nauseous, can't feel a bit nauseous when they first get to orbit. And people seem to do better with each flight. So if somebody has had the experience like Walter had the privilege of doing before he flew on an orbital flight, I think it's all to the good.
Okay, we've still got time for a couple more questions. Is there anything else in the room? Otherwise, I have a couple more that we received. Okay, great. It's back to me. So I think, Tuva, one that we had, and by the way, you were just incredibly articulate after literally returning from space and then making a speech. You touched on this a little bit, but it's, you know, what would you say to that next generation of people that have watched you today and they're wondering, how do I do that?
Well, the reason why we did this mission was for the next generation. Of course, we carried out research. That was one of the integral parts of this mission. But really, at its core, it is to inspire the next generation to dream even bigger, dream bolder, right? So what I would tell to them is exactly that. Just decide on, pick some really bold dreams for yourself, and then work diligently and strategically to turn them into attainable goals. Then come find us, right? Just be at our door. Dude, I want to do this. This is my dream, and I have a plan how to achieve it. So let's let's do this, let's do that. I will be more than happy to do whatever I can in the best of my capacity to help them achieve their dreams. So this is a journey that we're going to go into together and hopefully carry both our nation and also our global community to new heights, much more stellar future.
So I'd just like to add, with Deputy Minister Ahmet last week, the AX3 crew spent a few days in Turkey, including a couple of engagements at some universities, the Bosphorus University in Istanbul and also the Middle East Technical University in Ankara, who had a payload on this mission. And I am very impressed with the level of dedication that the Republic has given to its youth. We also visited many industries or companies in the space industry, and they showed us the demographics of their workforce, and it was astonishing how many of them are under 30 years old. We visited a couple of libraries, one each in Ankara and Istanbul, where they displayed that these libraries are open 24/7. The youth come in, they are given soup, baklava, and Turkish tea, and the investment that they have done in their future is only helped by inspirational figures like Alper and now Tuva. So I think the future is very bright for the youth in Turkey.
Yeah, I would like to add, thank you for your good words and observations. Yet Turkey is a very young nation, and what Tua and Alper Gezerarci has done really inspires the young generation, and we see that. And another platform that we see is the technology festival, we call it Technofest, where we have, for example, rocket launch competition, and we have vertical landing competition, we have satellite design competitions where more than 2 million young people, they compete in those projects. Actually, it's not just projects, they actually make their own rockets. So a nation, actually what TUA has done today really inspires the young people and this, we find that is very important. And after Tua goes back to Turkey, he will share his experiences with those young people. And then we are hoping that, of course, this is other goals of this mission, to inspire the youth. And we are hoping to have more and more interested, dedicated young people, engineers, who will work in this technology and space industry.
Thank you for all of those comments. I think that will be inspiring to many, many people out there. One last call for questions in the room. Okay. So I think, is there anything else any of you would like to say before we close out?
Well, I would like to thank, first and foremost, my space agency, my government, for allowing me the opportunity and privilege to serve in this capacity, and as we have all alluded to, inspire the next generation to pursue more ambitious dreams. I would like to thank Axiom and my great commander for being a beacon for us in this incredible journey, incredible, unforgettable adventure that we have been on together. And also, lastly, I would like to thank Virgin Galactic, all of these incredible people who are working here. That guy, Jamil, and I think your daughter, your niece. Oh, sorry. We have had incredible experiences with these people, and for all of your dedication, hard work, putting this mission together, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us for this press conference. This is going to be bringing us to a close, but first of all, just on behalf of everyone at Virgin Galactic, Tuva, first of all, thank you. This has just been a pleasure throughout the week. It's been an incredible crew to work with, and we're just very proud to support the ambitions of both Axiom, but also Turkey, and it's going to be incredibly exciting to see what you do next and what you all do next, actually. Thank you, Sarisha, as well, for joining our panel. You know, we've had Galactic 1, which was mentioned. We had Galactic 5, which was a research mission. And now we've had Galactic 7. And I just cannot wait to see what happens when we get into our Delta-class spaceships and what we'll be able to do from a research standpoint there as well. So thank you again. Final housekeeping. We do have a few minutes of broadcast B-roll that has been uploaded, so you should all have access to that, as well as images. And so the full press packet is now live. And after this, please do get in touch if you want to speak to anyone or you have any questions. Me and my team are here to help. Thank you again.